Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I wanted to talk about the sickness that's ailing the gaming industry right now, and that sickness is greed. There is nothing more than you can call it, because these gaming companies, these AAA gaming companies, are letting their greed actually affect the industry in a negative light. And they're not the only ones that are guilty. We sometimes, the gamers, we have to share in this guilt because we have actually supported them and we've actually egged them on by buying their games. We've told them that it is okay for them to give us broken games. It's okay for them to give us loot boxes and microtransactions. And they've gone ahead to keep doing it. Now, this year, players have actually wised up. So I would say for the most part, the gaming community is actually responding properly, as it should, to these practices. If you look right now, Fallout 76 has been heavily discounted and EA's Battlefield 5 has been discounted, both of them for different reasons. Yes, Fallout 76 was broken when it was released and is still in a place where a lot of players don't like it. And then they actually discounted the game pretty much a few days after it came out. So a lot of players most likely wanted to return their copies and buy the discounted copies, or just return their copies because they just weren't happy. And Bethesda tried to play a fast one, and a class action suit has now risen from nowhere, all for the sake of a video game. Now, are the consumers who want to return their product and get their refunds wrong about that? I doubt it. I mean, there should be a refund policy in place, and I think there is, and Bethesda needs to honor that refund policy according to how it has been stated. If the players are not satisfied with the game, then they need to take a hit and learn and then make a better game. If you look at the Metacritic score, it's obvious that people aren't happy with Fallout 76. EA's Battlefield 5, though, is a combination of many factors. It started from the 2017 Christmas season, the Battlefront 2, where EA tried to actually disrespect its own fan base and the Star Wars people by trying to put a loot box grind in a very, very solid IP. A lot of players did not forget this. Right now, as I speak to you, I have a copy of Battlefront 2 that I have not played, and I'm probably never going to play, because that game was a game that had so much potential, and EA decided to throw it out the window. This sickness called greed has not only been exhibited by some of the so-called AAA companies, but has also been defended by the gaming journalists. And this sickness, instead of it being exposed and diagnosed and treated, we see people actually hiding what exactly it is. We see people in these so-called gaming news agencies saying things like microtransactions are okay, saying things like, provocateurs on YouTube ought not to blame Bethesda's game engine for the bugs or whatever, giving technicalities and running interference for these companies. It seems like nobody knows anymore what the gaming standard is. So if that's the case, let's take a look at a video game that was actually made a few years ago. Let's look at Batman Arkham Knight. That game, yes, when it came out, Warner Brothers released the PC version that was actually broken. On the PC side of things, they withdrew that game, they fixed it, and then they launched it again. On the console, the game came out polished. So I'm going to speak on the console side. Forgive me for those of you who went through the PC debacle then. I apologize, but I want to speak on the console side of things, which is what I do know, what I've played. The game is polished, the game is well-rounded, the game is well done. If we even want to argue further, let's draw back a year or 2 years back where other Arkham games were actually released. And let's see if there was a standard back then and look at the standards that we have today. Bethesda released Fallout 76 in the way that it was, and a lot of people tried to defend it, saying things like that's just the way the game looks. Whereas games that were made in 2011 and 2009 and 2013, and I'm using the Arkham games, look way better. If you look at Shadow of Mordor, that game looked better. It played better than the mess that Bethesda released in the last few weeks. Battlefield 5, on the other hand, had these executives who were pretty much in a state where they had made so much money for their companies and they thought that they were invincible. Patrick Soderlund thought he was an invincible executive and made a statement toward his own player base, people who pay his salary, and said to them if they didn't like a game, they shouldn't buy it. And the players have actually listened. Right now, you're looking at the game at a discounted price. It's $30, ending today at Target, and it's $40 at Walmart. Now, a lot of players have still vowed that they're not going to spend their money on Battlefield 5 for any reason. Now, there are different schools of thought. There are the people who are saying EA and Bethesda are getting what they deserve. Rightly so. There is a side of them bringing out a game that has no place in gaming industry standards, and expecting players to pay $60 full price for these games. And now there's also the side where things are just sad, because there are developers that are actually the underlings of these AAA corporate executive madness that's going on, and they have to bear the weight. They have to suffer because their work, their art, is going to be unappreciated. It's going to be trashed, and it's going to be thrown into the forgotten abyss of bad, terrible video games. And sometimes the games are probably not even bad, but just because of in the case of Battlefield 5, yes, it feels a lot like Battlefield 1, but there are all the aspects regarding the specifics for hardcore Battlefield fans. But in the long run, I don't think the game is actually bad in a sense. I don't think it's Fallout 76 bad. There are bugs, there are some things, but because of EA's own social dysfunction, they don't know how to actually socially interact with their own community. They don't know how to do good public relations. Developers are going to see their work actually treated like nonsense all over the internet. And that, in my opinion, is a product of what EA has sowed. They're reaping the seeds of what they've sown. They've sown disdain and sown disrespect to a largely 18 to 35-year-old demographics of gamers, even maybe older. And they've treated these demographics like little 5-year-old children, like thinking that, they can say what they want and get away with what they want. This is what we see and what we've been seeing. Many of these companies, I don't know if they want to look like they are better than other people. They took moral stances, and even their counterparts in the gaming journalism sides, not all the gaming journalists anyways, also took their parts and decided to cover for them and run interference for them and make gamers in a collective look like they were bad people. The gaming journalists also understand that people who pay their paychecks are the gamers who read their articles. Nobody else cares about their articles. Their articles necessarily don't add much value to a lot of people. It is the gamers who read the articles. It's the gamers who buy the games. It's the gamers who engage in these games and the communities. They have the power. We, the gamers, have the power. We call the shots. We run the companies. The way we do that is from our wallets, where we're paying for these games. And so if gaming companies don't get the memo yet, if EA, Bethesda, companies that are making poor games don't get the memo yet, they're probably going to get it, because right now the gaming scene has become much more competitive. And if they don't get it, Red Dead Redemption, games like, Rockstar games that are good, Ubisoft is also trying their best, are going to seize the wallets and the loyalty of customers, because they don't try to insult their own customers. They try to play fair with them. Another side of things is we need to look as gamers on how we can actually start to encourage good developers that are not necessarily AAA. Yes, we have very good AAA companies like CD Projekt Red. We have Ubisoft that does okay. They try their best from time to time. We have some other AAA companies that do well. Rockstar does well. But we also need to start looking at indie games, especially those of us that have a voice, that speak about these games. We need to start talking about them and giving them some exposure, and start to get some of our gaming community members to actually patronize these indie gaming companies and get their games and start to play them and start to support them. Because as we support them, they're gonna get the encouragement, they're gonna get the motivation to make better and even take more and take bigger risks. Because right now, what's necessary in the industry is people who are willing to take a risk, people who are willing to get in there and change this industry and start to make good games and start to put forward very, very quality product, to start to heal this sickness in this industry, to start to heal the bad perception that the industry has, where developers are going against the players and players are going against the developers and the news journalists are going against the players. It's not a healthy environment. What's necessary in all of this is that we have people who are willing, developers, people who have the skills to start to make daring titles and just go for it. Now, yes, there's the time factor where they may make a game that's probably not going to do well. They don't have the marketing budget that's not going to be able to mask out some of these big AAA marketing budgets. But at the same time, I think on the internet, on the web, on Twitter, on YouTube, there's so much potential for these games to actually get the word out there and get people to actually pay for their games and support them. I think this is one of the ways that we can start to heal this industry. The second thing I think that can actually heal this gaming industry is with all of the talk that we have going on the internet. You know, we gamers, we talk a lot about this stuff. I wonder if there aren't many gamers out there who have experience in programming, game design, who can actually start to put some groundwork in place and perhaps maybe come up with the next AAA game after a few years of, doing some serious work. If I had the skills to program, I would probably spend my time trying to make a game or make a replacement to some of these, games that are being brought out there. Game design is very difficult. It's very hard. It's not easy to make a game. The technology is there, but now that, we have a lot more demand on the quality of games, how they should look, animations, all these things, I think, we're in a different time. But that doesn't give any, that's not an excuse, but I think as much as we talk, as much as we on YouTube are taking a stance and putting out our opinions on these games, what does it look like if consumers started to look into making games? Another thing too might be crowdfunding. This was very, very common. It was much more common back in the day for people to crowdfund these games. And right now there's still crowdfunding going on. There's a small sector, a small market of indie games that are still being crowdfunded. We as gamers can actually start looking in there, and also we need for these indie game companies to actually start to take more daring steps. They need to start coming out because already they're putting their resources in making some of these games. I think they need to start making some very, very good signature titles like sports games, racing games. They need to start doing a lot more of those so that we can start to see their work and see their capability. It's going to be a hard journey. Rome was not built in a day. Everything is going to take a while, but this is, I think, a 15-20 year effort at least for the AAA industry to start to see that it can overstay its welcome in the hearts and minds of a lot of people if they ever try to pull off the things that they've been trying to pull off the past few years. Because many of these companies, they're not running a sustainable business model. It doesn't take a genius to see that all they are short-term gains. They're going to make big bursts of money when they release a game, but if they continue to throw their fans under the bus, no one's going to pay for their games. If no one pays for their games, these game journalists, they're not going to have articles to write. We YouTubers, we're not going to have anything to talk about. So in the end, we all want a healthy gaming industry. It's sad that news is about, conflict and controversy, but at the same time, what's really necessary for the industry is not to be, very controversial, but instead to actually meet certain industry standards and do a good job. I think Bethesda can recover. They're bringing out Doom very soon. I think they ought to polish that game, and they ought to actually send a game that's appealing to the fans and to the dedicated supporters. They don't need to take dedication and throw that away. They need to learn from big companies that have lasted for, decades, like Coca-Cola, companies that know how to actually work with their customer. EA needs to revive its core gaming side and just remove its mind from this heartlessness of wanting to just make money and then just be greedy, because that's going to run the company into the ground. As the news continues to go out that EA's brand new game is already discounted, people are more and more reading that as a sign of EA not even knowing exactly what to do. They're reading it as a sign of a company that's not confident in its own product. Even when they'd made all this noise and they seem to be the tough guys, they can't even stand for their own product. And what does that signals to the consumer? That the company is not serious. So there's so many factors that being greedy, will definitely shoot you in the foot. And that's what these companies are seeing. And that's the sick sickness that we have in our AAA gaming industry today. Now, that's not all AAA gaming industries, don't get me wrong, or video game publishers. Not all AAA video game publishers are greedy. Some of them, have actually said things like, we leave the greed to others. Some of them, they want to make money, but they know how to do the basics. Rockstar will monetize sometimes, but for the basics, they will make you a basic video game that actually works, that's actually at the core of video game production. Nevertheless, with all of this talk, I hope that we as the gaming community can keep an open mind. This is not a rage video. I don't care for doing a rage video and making people mad and, cussing everybody out and saying all kinds of stuff. We already know we're going to get a bunch of videos like that anyways. But I wanted to look at this from a different perspective and see that, what's the future going to hold? Is the future going to look like this, where every time we have memes about bad games? Or is the future going to be a future that's going to be a better one, where good games start to come out? Because the past was actually okay. If you look at the last generation, the 360 PS3 generation, there were a lot of video games in that generation. This generation has only seen disappointment, and with the next generation at the door there waiting to be launched, is this how we're going to send the next are we going to go into the next generation with skepticism? This is, in my opinion, one of the times where I've seen that consumers are very, very skeptic and very, very reserved in buying any AAA games. People don't want to buy them anymore. They don't want to pre-order them anymore, because these AAA companies have used their marketing to pretty much just woo people and then burn them at the end of the whole transaction. And so humans are humans. We don't like to be cheated. We don't like to be treated like subclass species. We like to be shown respect. We have our pride, and we have our own persuasions. And so these gaming companies are probably going to learn a lesson, and if they don't, they'll probably be packing their bags and going home. The sad thing is the developers that have to do the groundwork are the ones that are going to suffer the most, because these corporate execs, they make millions of dollars. That their salaries are millions of dollars. And your regular programmer and level designer guy, yeah, he may be making a few $100,000, but he's gonna crunch when it's time for the game to come out. He's your regular guy that he knows what it takes. He wants to do what it takes, but corporate execs can go ahead and just blow everything up and do something really silly. Anyways, that's all I have for today. Sorry for giving you guys a long video. I just wanted to make sure that I poured out everything that I think we need to know and everything we need to be looking at as gamers. That's all I have for today. Consider subscribing, hit the like button if you liked this video. If you hated the video, hit the dislike